Trial, 13 women testified that the former cop had coerced them into having sex after threatening.
The jury deliberated more than 13 hours before sentencing Aaron Dean to nearly 12 years in prison.
Ever since the police services were established in Boston in 1838, the world has come to terms with the fact that not every serviceman who swore to protect and serve the public actually took that oath seriously. Over time, we've heard of several incidents when some of these dirty cops got away with some of the most heinous crimes ever. Think about the policeman who got away with brutalizing Rodney King in the early 90s. As much as there are cops like the 4 who got away with the violent attack on Rodney King, there are many of these cops who have been made to feel the long arm of the law after abusing their position as the custodians of peace and order in the society. In today's video, we're going to show you how several of these cops were hauled into prison due to their disgusting crimes. We're sure it'll please the viewers as they watch while the judge throws the book at these criminals hiding in uniform. Here are several cases where dirty cops got thrown into prison for life. Aaron Dean. The first corrupt cop on our list is Aaron Dean, a man whose actions will forever change the course of his unfortunate victim's life, while also resparking the age-old discourse on police brutality. Before the life-altering event, Aaron Dean was a detective with a clean record within the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport Department. That would all change in the morning of the 12th of October 2019, just before the COVID-19 outbreak. This is when the police officer was at the scene of a non-emergency wellness check at the Jefferson home. Rather than doing his job, the scene turned ugly when Officer Dean shot and killed Tatiana Jefferson, who was there to take care of her elderly relative. What made the scene even more devastating is that Tatiana was shot through her window while she was playing video games with her nephew.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
A tragic escalation of a harmless scenario. Understandably, Aaron Dean along with the entire world felt the consequences of this terrible action. This was just another display of the many flaws of the police system. Although Officer Dean had maintained a clean record before this incident, this would all change following the event that displayed the violation of several departmental policies, the most important of which was his failure to display the appropriate use of force and de-escalation tactics. Although this event forced Aaron Dean to leave the police department, the law was not done with him yet. Soon he found himself before a judge, and before he knew it, he was gearing himself up for sentencing in August 2021. Which is when a Tarrant County judge found him guilty of manslaughter. After listening to the heart-wrenching witness statement of Ashley Carr, Tatiana's sister,
I wanted to cheer her on during her long nights of studying for medical school and be an even louder cheerer.
The judge duly announced that Officer Dean will be sentenced to 11 years in prison. Stoic and emotionless till the end, Dean will spend a good chunk of life wondering what made him pull that trigger. Daniel Holtsclaw. Our next entry involves Daniel Holtsclaw, a once promising officer in Enid, Oklahoma. Compared to a wolf in sheep's clothing, Holtsclaw's crimes remind us once again that not everybody who takes the oath to serve and protect civilians truly means it. What is sad about this case is that even before this young man became an officer, many looked up to him before he decided to join the police force. Holtsclaw was a standout football athlete born in Guam before his family returned to the US. Holtsclaw amazed his campus in the Enid High School by setting records as a linebacker for his high school football team, most notably of which was the fact that he once made 25 successful tackles in one game. Although he'd go on to play for Eastern Michigan University, a career with the NFL was in store for him. Instead, he completed his time at college with a degree in criminal justice in 2010. This degree, which is normally seen as a sign of a bright future, will turn out to be the start of this young man's downfall. He returns home to become an officer in the Oklahoma Police Department, where his father, Eric Holtsclaw, once served as a lieutenant back in the day. Unfortunately, he would fail to follow his father's stellar example. In fact, he would instead take the opposite direction. Rather than upholding the duty of care imposed on police officers, Holtsclaw would bring disgrace to his name and the force by committing disgusting crimes against the women he swore to protect. What makes his crimes even more heinous is the fact that he targeted those he considered weak and vulnerable, by attacking those in the impoverished sections of the city. He also made use of background checks so that he could target those with warrants or questionable records, because he probably felt that they had no other choice but to subject themselves to his sick demands. How this man got into the police force must be investigated. Once captured, it's somewhat enraging to watch as this criminal blubbers in front of the judge, who informed him that he would be spending a good chunk of his life in prison, after he was sentenced to 263 years for 18 charges of several variations of sexual assault. Michael Dotro. Next up, we take a look at Michael Dotro, a cop whose fall from grace was spectacular to those who witnessed it. This is because Dotro was considered to be one of the brightest and precocious young officers of the police force. Few could deny that he had a bright career ahead of him as a police officer. But what these people didn't know was that Dotro's stellar comportment was just a thin-veiled facade of the true criminal he was. Even as he became a sergeant in 2011, Dotro was considered to be one of the best officers of the force. The public was unaware that the man was one to obstruct justice every chance he got. Not only that, he was also known to conspire to tamper with witness evidence as well, which showed that he wasn't the knight in shining armor that we thought he was. What must be said is that once the law caught up with him, Dotro didn't hesitate to own up to his crimes and pled guilty while standing in front of a judge. Now disgraced, his fall was completed when he was given a whopping 20 years in jail as his sentence. No amount of pleas for leniency would stop the judge from understanding how grievous Dotro's crimes were, and hopefully more covert, corrupt officers will face similar sentences when they are found guilty of similar crimes. As soothing as hearing this sentence must have been for observers, they couldn't help but be wary and confused by Dotro's stoic comportment after being thrown into jail for what could potentially be the rest of his life. Not a flicker of guilt was present on his face, even when he expressed his so-called remorse for the crime he committed. Hopefully, this regret that we hope to see will hit him once he's behind those cold metal bars. Derek Chauvin. Finally, we take a look at what shook the world to its core during the COVID pandemic. Everybody is familiar with the case of George Floyd, a man whose life was cut short by the violent monster that is Derek Chauvin. That said, it must be noted that Chauvin has a history of violent behavior long before this disgusting crime was committed. Born and bred in the Twin Cities area, Chauvin was another high school football player who somehow found his way into the police force. However, rather than using his strength and speed to protect those he swore to serve, Chauvin became a thorn in the flesh of those he descended upon. Once he signed up with the Minneapolis Police Department in 2001, Chauvin's reign of terror began as he rose swiftly through the ranks of the police force. His darkness came to the fore as he committed more than 18 violations while in office, most of which involved a flagrant use of excessive force. Despite this being something of a trademark of this violent officer, it must be noted that his police force decided to turn a blind eye to Chauvin's violent and aggressive conduct while he was representing them, even after he brought the life of a suspect to an end in 2017. This may be why he was so bold as to commit the crime that he would become infamous for. On the 25th of May 2020, the fateful encounter occurred when Chauvin came across George Floyd, the 46-year-old African-American who was accused of using counterfeit notes. Rather than taking the man into custody like he ought to, Chauvin subjected Floyd to the most inhumane treatment you can imagine. Everybody can still remember as this man told them he couldn't breathe because Chauvin put his knee on Floyd's neck for more than 8 minutes. We can all remember how this man begged for his mother while he drew his final breath. We can also remember how Chauvin laughed during this man's final moment, right before he realized what he had just done. Unfortunately, his realizations will come a little too late for both him and Floyd. This injustice was met with swift persecution as Chauvin was remanded for more than a year. On June 25, 2021, Chauvin learned of his fate as a judge sentenced him to 22.5 years in prison. He appeared remorseless until the end, even when he offered a feeble apology to George Floyd's family. As we hope he receives similar judgment in prison, this incident serves as a stark reminder of the fact that not all these men dressed in uniforms are heroes. There are many like Chauvin whose darkness is masked with their police uniforms. We just hope that the law catches up with them before it's too late.